I just having a wonderful pre-show with
actually talking about the show.
Actually talking about a lot of really great talking points, and
which we'll
we
forget
weren't
now.
live for it, so there's that. Yeah, hi Barry, how are you? Everything situation normal here.
Yeah, it's all good, isn't it? I've had one of them days where I'd been out, been away with work, and so I stayed out in a hotel last night and did my day's worth of work. And my meeting this afternoon went on a lot longer than I expected, and but it would just have to be one of these. As soon as I hit the road, I was tired, and it's about a 2.5 hour trip, and so I ended up driving a lot slower than I usually do because I was tired. And so if I fall asleep halfway through this, Amanda, my wife, is going to be watching to see if I fall asleep during the show tonight, just so you can laugh at me.
Gotcha. All right, so we're on Barry Snooze Watch.
That's
is there like a special graphic that we can throw up here? I feel like there's something we can make. Hang on.
You'll see like a siren or something if you see me nodding off. I don't think I've got anything that I meant to redo a lot of my thingy sounds, but I just never got around to it.
I wonder if
what's that one? If
I mean, I could just do a quick patch and make it like fun here. I could just do like one of these numbers, but change the words, obviously. That's just one that I like throwing up here from time to time. Well,
always makes me giggle. What's this one then? What's that do? That's weird. I've got one on my pads here. I've got one called Trash Talk, but when I press it, it doesn't do anything. Is that doing? Can you still hear me with that?
I can still hear you with that.
Yeah, so I don't know what that does. That's a bit rubbish.
All right. Right. That's way too abrasive.
That's the profanity sensor.
Yeah, but it didn't even fucking work.
I know. I mean, the amount of effort you got to go, and you are now doing some, and that's. But you got to find the button. You got to hit the button. It's got to be the right button, and yeah.
Oh, jeez. Sorry, anyone watching who.
I would say you got us kicked off already, and you've lost us our PG rating.
I usually try not to do that until it's like, post show, we're relaxed a little bit, but I guess I'm just really relaxed tonight. I don't know, man. So I put this thing up right here. Will Barry fall asleep on the stream tonight? Let's find out. And I feel like maybe we need something a little bit more fancy. Like give me a. I wonder if there's a way to give me an idea for a stream overlay for a Twitch streamer trying to not fall asleep.
But while you do that, I don't know whether I mentioned this before, but I use the Podcaster by Rode here. They've got the Podcaster 2 out now, and it's in the shops, and I've been looking at it, and it's very pretty.
Oh yeah,
I can't.
I was looking at that too. I know I can't either.
Can't justify it, but though we are running multiple podcasts on multiple platforms and getting requests worldwide to engage with us. So I mean, maybe we can, because none of them are particularly paying much money or any. But yeah, I do find. I think if I get to a point where I've got at least 500 quid just rolling around, because I haven't seen many appear on eBay or other secondhand sites. It's all been Amazon at the moment. So if anybody does know one, because in fact this one I got secondhand off eBay, just in really, really good condition. But who knows? So, have you had a fun week?
Have I had a fun week? I've had a great week, actually. I feel much more, I don't know, refreshed from last time. Last week was just kind of a little bit of a, what's the word I'm looking for? It was like, I don't even know the word I'm looking for. It was very busy, and so I was burned out when I got on stream last week. But this week's a better week. I feel energized. I feel ready to tackle this story tonight. It's a good story. I think we were actually losing ourselves in this story about talking points before we even get live, which is a little atypical. Barry and I usually go back and forth with, like, I don't know, what kind of bullshit are you talking about this week? You know, like, or dealing with this week, I should say. And, you know, stuff that we can't say on air. That's really what we go talk about.
Yeah, we tend to talk about maybe, I don't know, things that have stressed us out in the work domain and things like that that we definitely can't put out on on air, otherwise we might not have a work domain to talk about.
Either that, or can you believe this political thing that happened? Like, we keep all that behind the scenes, and, like, I don't know if you're all interested in that stuff. Let us know. I guess we could have like a T-cast or something.
That could be cool. So speaking of which, we could have watched live the 4 new things that your ex-president's got.
Oh yeah,
4 new charges.
Oh yeah.
Do you reckon it's a bit like, you know, when you work in McDonald's and you get the stars, when you go through your training? You reckon it's the same for presidents? If you get indicted so many times, or you get so many charges, you get like a certificate or something?
I don't know. The thing that cracks me up. Did you see the other day that he walked out at like one of those rallies, and as he walked out on stage, "You Could Go to Prison" was playing on a song. You could go to prison, you could be president, right? Something like that. It was like this, they're beyond parody at this point. Anyway, if you want a politics cast, that's a different story. Maybe we should do a Patreon only one. At least hide it behind a paywall there.
There has been a burst of, because I do listen to political podcasts. It's sort of my my second bout of things I listen to, and there has been a splurge. That's an official measurement. A splurge of political podcasts out there, news-based stuff, which is really interesting. But actually, maybe there is still a gap in the market for a human factors based political commentary program. So we talk about it from the people and usability perspective.
Yeah, well, I mean, what's interesting is, like, at least in the States, you have Mike Inslee, who's sitting on the Government Relations Committee, GRE or GRC, and you know, she's sitting there on the Hill interacting with politicians, testifying before Congress. Like, there's a clip of her talking about issues with or I guess I shouldn't say. I gotta be careful with this. She's talking out there about some of the things going on with the 747 Max. There's a clip out there that, you know, we linked to in one of our previous episodes. It's really cool to see. Like, oh hey, like, I've talked to you before, and you're
and you're doing that. So she's providing evidence to Congress, isn't she?
Yes. Yes.
So to our equivalent of select committees and things like that. So. Which is really, I mean, that's somewhere where I'm trying to get the CIHF up to as well. We are submitting evidence to more inquiries and more investigations and things. And I was talking to a couple of our members of Parliament just the other day, just about this very topic. I said a couple, one. But no, I think this is something that we as human factors people need to be doing more and not be so shy about shouting where we need to be getting policy right.
Yeah,
but that's my
I let's see here. Hold on. Sorry, I'm oops. I am looking for a moment on where this happens in the live stream. So I think I've definitely seen this before, and maybe where's C-SPAN? C-SPAN actually, ironically, C-SPAN has a wonderful like video player. It's actually really cool, and you can like hang on, I'll actually let's do a little C-SPAN scanning here before share screen assistant. No, don't automatically do it. Start share screen sharing. All right, let's do this. All right, we'll go there. All right, and then you know what? Just so this all looks great, we're gonna take that away first. I said take that away. There it goes. And then we're gonna do this. All right, so check this out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to filter by speaker. So this is on the C-SPAN website, and this is actually really cool. Okay, like as like a UX person, usability. Look at this. You can filter by speaker, and I'm going to go down, and it's not alphabetical, but I'm going to go down to Micah Inslee, and then look, it shows you clips. It shows you the full text of what they were saying there. So this is from a hearing back in 2019, December 2019, so about 4 years ago. Give or take a couple months. And you can actually just go and play that clip, and there it is.
That's cool.
And so I don't know if I have my audio shared right now. Can you hear that audio? No?
No.
I think it duplicates your audio when I do that, so I'm not going to do it. But you can actually hear her talking about, it's very hard to diagnose what the plane is doing when it is something you have never heard of. There was no information why it was acting erratically. As Captain Cox pointed out, they didn't have the procedure Boeing assumes they would. Like, this is so cool. This is really cool. I get jazzed, energized. This is neat stuff.
Good. Yes, we like that.
C-SPAN. It's advertisement for C-SPAN on the Human Factors Cast.
And are they sponsoring us now?
No.
No? Whoa.
But I'm just so impressed with them. I'm just so impressed with that. Like, it's so good. It's so good. Sorry. Anyway, there's that. But yes, there's a lot from a Human Factors perspective. Politics. Yeah, let's do it. Why not? What's another podcast in all this?
Well, this is true. It's I was saying that I've got very behind on my 1202 interviews. I've got 6 or 7 sort of loosely lined up, and I just haven't got around to interviewing them yet. And so I'm hoping to get a couple done in the next couple of weeks. But I'm also wanting to go on holiday, and I'm also wanting to do other things. And I've realized that there's just not enough hours in the day.
No, there really aren't. And I'm discovering that myself too. If anyone wants to get involved with the lab and wants to help
do all this,
help us do things, I've like completely abandoned my lab leader duties lately, which just does not feel great. But
I noticed you were busy the other day because I saw my emails suddenly started going bing, 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 bing to record loads of stuff. And I'm like, okay, I need to get on and actually do that.
Oh yeah. Talk to you about that.
There's I could do with a scheduler, somebody to just organize my interviews for me, and then I can go and do them. That's fine. And
didn't you hire someone within the family to take care of that role?
Well, I thought I had. It turns out that maybe I hadn't been as clear in my job description as I thought I was, and it kind of gets in the way of, I don't know, going clubbing, going out with friends.
Gotcha. I understand.
The boring stuff that that kind of gets in the way. So we are going to be having a discussion about it this week.
Oh,
though technically she wasn't going to do the scheduling. She's going to be doing the shorts.
Right, the short.
And that stuff, which I've just completely fallen off with as well.
Dude, the shorts are so hard to keep up with, and I have exciting news. We have a backlog of 100 shorts that we're looking at to release, just like 100 days of shorts, one every day for the next 100 days. We just need to sort through them and find out which ones are good or not, because we're using some of those automated services, and some of them are not great.
No, I mean, I've got some of that. What was the name of that fully automated one that we got excited by, and then
Dummy? Was that it? Dummy?
Yeah, it could have been that one. That I didn't think was as cool as I thought it was going to be.
That one's actually better than better than it was at launch. So like it's
maybe I need to go
along.
back to
It's coming along.
But actually, that was it. The video AI one. Was it
video? Yeah.
Yeah, video. That was better than I thought it was going to. Oh, that's got better than I thought it was going to be because that was pretty rubbish at launch as well. So,
yeah. A couple of them out there, but I mean, like overall, I think we're coming. Like it's the worst that they're ever going to be at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. It's only going to go one way.
And yeah, exactly. And I'm excited about it because like some of them are really good. Like there was a conversation that Heidi and I had about like it got pretty heated back in one of our other episodes about speed limits, ironically, since we're talking about that tonight. And it's a hilarious conversation. So that's where that's where it gets really good. All right, this is why I'm not a designer. But I figured I needed to do something because of the sleep meter. So you wanted it. You got it. There you go, sleep meter.
Oh, sleep meter. Okay. Does it
so
do
dumb.
anything?
No, it's just an overlay.
It's just that. Okay, cool. Love it.
Okay, get that trash out of here. All right. All right. 10 minutes of show. I am yawning, which is not a good sign. Ugh.
You can't do that when I'm
Can't
the
do
one
that. No, you're the one. Yeah, it's late for you. It's like a reasonable hour for me. Let's see. So let's see here. That's the story tonight. What is it? Cities, emotional edifices. You like the use of alliteration that I've been using in the titles lately? We had antisocial architecture, emotional edifices.
Yeah. This one's it's. I like the way that this story goes into the history of city building. We go back to prehistoric times through to Middle Ages, Industrial Revolution, and things like that. But I don't know. I don't necessarily like the way that they've put that into a modern context. I think some of their assumptions are a bit flawed, but we shall talk about that when we're actually recording. Because we go back to the 2,500 BC. BCE? What's BCE?
Before the Common Era.
Okay.
There's BCE and CE is sort of the.
Is that instead of BC and AD?
Yes.
Right.
Common Era before Common Era. Yeah.
Honestly, that's the first time I've heard that.
Really? Yeah, it might be a little bit more common in the States here then.
Yeah, I think so. You crazy kids, you.
Yeah, we're just...
Which is ironic because actually the States, I think, at the moment is still way more Christianity religiously grounded than the UK is.
Oh, yeah. No,
but we just don't like change. And we've been doing this for a very long time.
Yeah.
Whereas you
guys...
That
might be it. That might be it. Oh. Yeah. So, the story tonight, the emotions and how city design affects us specifically as drivers. So that'll be fun to look at. And you know what? We usually do a little preview in the post-show we do a preview in the pre-show of what's to come next week. Yeah, and then we talk a little bit about it in the post-show. So let's just do a preview of the potential for 291. What do you say? You want to walk down that path?
Yeah, we can have a look at that. And I'm just looking, and I think this out of the 4 available, I'm still only going to want to talk about one of them. So, do you want me to run down them?
Yeah. So the 4 available here.
So the 4 available. The first one.
You read them.
Is the FAA launches new committee to explore regulations on commercial human spaceflight. That's exciting, and there's a lot of stuff around that. Maybe this should also include submersibles, but let's not deviate. The second one is, does staying informed help us cooperate? The third one is, what self-driving cars tells us about AI risks. And the fourth one is, 3D display could soon bring touch to the digital world.
So I'm going to take a wild guess, and the one that you want to talk about is number 1.
Yeah, totes. Though saying that, number 3 is kind of interesting. I know we do a lot of AI and all that sort of stuff, but actually, if the story goes where I think it should go, about, because I would like to think this is going to get into the whole people getting into the back to sleep whilst it's driving, despite being told not to do that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It tells us about human behavior and human attitude to AI risk. Then that's interesting. If it's not that, then I'm not interested.
Barry, we are the podcast hosts. It could go wherever we want it to go.
That's true.
So, we usually make these shows what we want to be. So, you know what? If you all want to choose that news, you can scan this QR code here, and anyone can vote on it. Anyone, patrons, non-patrons alike. If there was one story that you would want people to not vote on, why don't you give us that so we can see those numbers rise? Because that always happens.
Normally we have the link to the stories. Am I just not looking at the right bit?
They're in they're there.
No, the story. Why can't I see?
They are the bullet points.
Oh, they put the continue reading in the wrong place. That's why. I just want to look at the 3D touch one, because if it's what I think it is, then I'm not interested. Right. I don't want to talk about the 3D display one, I don't think.
Okay.
So we'll see that one rocket.
Yeah, so we'll just wait patiently for people to vote on that one.
And then does staying informed help us cooperate? What's the premise of that story? See, the irony is the spaceflight one is probably going to be quite dull because it's just about lodging a committee, isn't it? But we could get into what does that regulation need to look like, and we could do that in light of story from last week with the Titan thing. So then that would link a whole lot of stuff nicely together around the need for decent legislation.
Yeah, that's where I'm at with it.
Oh, the staying informed one isn't necessarily as dull as I thought it was going to be. It's talking about the use of existential dilemmas that are shared by all of humanity. And does it help us cooperate? That, and it actually brings out the idea of climate change and stuff. So actually, that's something I'm quite interested in with my climate economics stuff. So regardless of whether we talk about it, I'm going to take that away and read it anyway.
Yeah. Good.
Because it's useful. I mean, clearly, I want to talk about spaceflight.
Yeah, you do.
Yes,
you do.
Who's it who said to me the other day? Because I was talking about my fascination and love of all things space, and they were like, "Oh, would you be keen to be an astronaut?" I was like, "I'd love to be an astronaut." They were like, "Keen enough to diet to lose the weight to be an astronaut?" I'm like, "That's half offensive."
Well then,
but probably not. I don't necessarily want to be an astronaut that much. I just want to be involved.
Just involved.
I want to press the button, the go button or something.
The launch button.
Yeah.
Is it written in big old letters that says launch? Who launches it? Do they launch it from onboard or offboard? They do it at
from
mission control, right?
No, from launch control. So
Launch control. Okay.
Because you launch it locally and then hand over to Houston, don't you? Or to run the mission.
Right.
That's mission control, I think. So you launch from, say, Canaveral or wherever it is you go, and they handle that bit. And then, I don't know, I could be talking rubbish.
You know, I'm really excited for the future when Africa is going to be like huge in the space race.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very excited for that. Like,
well, in the UK, we're going to have 4 spaceports here, which is that's huge. Exciting. What I find quite interesting. So we've got spaceport Cornwall, and what it consists of, because that's where the Virgin Galactic took off from to launch Virgin 1 that failed spectacularly. The other, well, it didn't succeed. It didn't fail. It just didn't succeed. And all they've done really is take an older airbase and put up a new sign saying Cornwall Spaceport, and that's it. It's a spaceport because it's got a sign on it saying it's a spaceport. Shouldn't have. I'm
gonna put a spaceport sign outside my domicile.
I'm going to put one in my back garden.
Speaking of signs, what happened to your sign that was behind you and now is not behind you?
We had an incident. It is still here, no?
Is it okay? Please tell me it is okay.
It is okay, but it scared the bejesus out of me. So basically, it was held on, but so it had 2 clasps going to a chain that I could hang on the wall.
Right.
Because I didn't want to drill it to the wall, just in case I move things around. Or for whatever reason, say I'm now, especially now, if I'm hosting certain meetings, I don't think it's appropriate for me to have it in the background to be advertising my podcast when I'm doing, like, say, particularly presidential meetings and things like that. So I try and be good about it. Anyway, there was one day, and I was sat there, and suddenly I had this almighty crash from behind me. So basically, the chain, the links, the 2 clasps holding the train, one of them give way, and the whole thing just fell to the ground. And you know when you're looking, where you're looking, you're like, I don't actually know whether I want to look, see if it's broken. I'm going to cry because it was so expensive.
Right.
Anyway, thankfully it works, so it's all okay.
Okay, it is okay.
Yes. So when we move around the offices, I'm going to bolt it to the wall there instead, I think. Because I could do the smaller one for here. I think my usual attitude of go big or go home maybe was slightly inappropriate. I need one maybe half the size. It's nicely nestled over my shoulder.
All right. Well, hey, we're just about at start time. Is there anything else that we need to look at in the show notes here before we get started?
Well, we haven't actually looked at the show notes at all, so this would be
we haven't.
start.
And this will be.
I've got access for everything. The first it came from is genius, and I think we both largely have just seen some of the comments. I think we're.
You like that answer?
Yeah.
I need to figure out how to say that appropriately.
Well, have you seen my first line for the first one? Then you've got your first line for the second. Is it the second one? No, for your third one.
Oh yeah, the third one. Yeah.
Yeah. So you got the third one. Mine got the first one. So.
Yeah. That was it. I thought the first one was the third one. We actually had a really great question from Discord that I'm sad came in a little bit too late for us to sneak into the show. Maybe we can talk about it next week. I think I'm going to pull it in for next week because it actually is a really good question.
Oh, next week. What am I? Oh no, I'm back. I'm going out on trials next week. I'm very excited. Actual trials in a field. I'm really excited about that.
I love that. All right, hey, we're going to be right back, and we're going to start this show thing here. Yeah, we're going to do it. All right, be right back right after this intro.
Welcome to Human Factors Cast, your weekly podcast for human factors, psychology, and design.
Hi, hey, hello. We're back. We're energized. We're ready to do this. It's episode 290. We're recording this episode live on August 3rd, 2023. This is Human Factors Cast. I'm your host, Nick Roome, joined today by Mr. Barry Kirby.
Hello.
Come on, I was full energy for that, and all I get out of you is a hello.
Hello.
All right.
Hello.
We got a great show for you all lined up tonight. We're going to be diving into the fascinating topic of how the design of our cities influences our driving decisions and emotions. And later on, we'll be answering some questions from our community, including questions on struggling to land a new role, pursuing a career as a UXer given the competition and salary trends, and our role as human factors UX in convincing stakeholders to engage with the research. All that and more. But first, hey, just in case you are new to the show, there's a couple things we want you to be aware of. There's a few things that you can help us with too. If you can give us a review, that would be really helpful. Helps other people find the show. Tell your friends about us. We have a Patreon that you can help support us financially. Usually ask this towards the end, but again, if you want to do any of that, we would welcome that. I also want to let you all know that we're starting something new. You may have seen it earlier this week, but on Mondays, we're going to now start doing In Case You Missed It. This is every Monday at noon Pacific. We're just going to do a repost of the live stream just in case you missed it and want to be involved in the conversation. I'll be sitting in on those conversations if there's anyone who wants to chat about what's going on the screen. I won't address it on the live screen, obviously, since it's a replay event, but in case you missed it, we'll be there in chat. Anyway, Barry, what's going on with 1202? What's the latest?
How cool would it be if we could comment on the things from in case you missed it in the live show? Could we guess? Sorry, I'm completely taken away from that. I think it's a great idea. Anyway, so on 1202, the latest one, and I'm stumbling slightly because actually the artificial feed has brought in the wrong one. So the artificial feed has brought in the talking about artificial intelligence in hospitals with Kate Preston, which has been up for quite a while, but it's really great article to listen to. However, the latest is talking about human factors integration with Trevor Dobbins, and in particular looking at it from the perspective of armored vehicles, armored military vehicles, and some of the great work he's been doing, him and his team. So he leads a team of human factors practitioners in basically making sure that there is the right assurance in place to make sure that people are thought about throughout the project lifecycle of developing basically pieces of armor with big guns on the top. So well worth listening to.
Great. Well, if that automation's broken, that means your feed is broken. So let's figure that out.
I think I know why it is, but and it's my fault, not yours, so that's fine.
Okay. All right. Well, let's figure that out. Anyway, why don't we get into this the news? Let's just get into the news. That's right. This is the part of the show all about human factors news. Mr. Barry Kirby, where is our news story taking us this week? Where's it driving us?
I see what you did there. That's clever. Our story this week is talking about how does the design of our cities influence our driving decisions and emotions. So in this article, the focus is on the intersection of urban design and user experience in the context of driving. The author explores how the design of cities can profoundly impact our driving decisions and emotions. So starting with the historical context, the article examines how city planning has evolved over time from ancient civilizations to the present-day smart city revolution. Principles such as connectivity, accessibility, legibility, and visibility are discussed in relation to their influence on driving experiences. The integration of technology in smart cities and smart communities is emphasized as means to enhance driving predictability and, in theory, reduce stress. Moreover, the article explores the impact of urban design on driver emotions, highlighting the importance of aesthetics, the reduction of noise and air pollution, and the creation of a sense of control. The social and psychological aspects of urban design are also discussed, emphasizing how cities can foster or hinder community engagement and social interaction. The article concludes by calling for individual drivers and collective citizens to contribute to the shaping of the future of cities by making choices that prioritize connectivity, empowerment, and emotional fulfillment. Overall, the article underscores the vital role of urban design in the human factors profession, emphasizing the importance of understanding and optimizing the user experience within driving environments. So, Nick, what road is this article taking you down in terms of the way that you feel about your driving emotion?
An emotional one. It's an emotional roller coaster. Look, here's the thing. I saw this story and I thought, wow, this is fun to talk about, fun to think about. And I really started thinking about a lot of really cool things that are actually happening, I don't know, close-ish in proximity to me. And one thing for me, I've been in, city centers, well, close to city centers all my life. And so like driving through cities on freeways slowly because of traffic gets me emotional. And not in a good way. And it gets me really frustrated. And also driving in an unfamiliar, just, drawing on some of my experiences here, driving in an unfamiliar place where you're not quite sure what's going on. Signage only does so much. And your navigation app only does so much. I mean, what were we doing before that? And I remember MapQuest. Do you? But look, here's the thing: is that there's entire cities who are rethinking the way that they create these spaces to be different and geared towards a different goal, right? So one thing that's close-ish to me is Seattle's remodel of Alaska Way, and basically what happened here is there was like an entire freeway going through the the whole waterfront of Seattle. And what they did is they shifted that underground and then they redesigned the space above ground to be more walkable and pedestrian friendly. And kind of discourage drivers from going around that area. But if you do drive through it, it's really nice and pretty. And your tax dollars at work. But Barry, I'm getting ahead of myself here. We'll talk more about that later. What are your thoughts on the story?
In many ways, I quite liked it. It touches upon a whole bunch of issues that I've been involved with probably over the past 10, 15 years or so. I guess to start with, it was an interesting walk through history. If you go and read the article, it does go into, 2,500 BC, from all the way through the Middle Ages, through to the industrial age, through to the modern age, with different aspects of usability. But it does kind of have a bit of a weird premise for me that everyone's workflow is the same as it is now. And I guess what I mean by that, so I'll take a quote from the article. Fast forward to the Middle Ages, and we find cities with winding alleyways and serpentine roads, reflecting the organic, unplanned growth. These labyrinthine layouts often result in higher cognitive load for navigation. Well, yeah, see, if you drive around them now, they do. They're hard to drive around. You've got some of the cities here in the UK. You drive around bits of London, York, places like that. They're quite hard to navigate. But at the time, in the Middle Ages, they weren't, because you weren't driving around everywhere at 50 to 70 mile an hour. So actually, their cognitive load at the time for navigation is nowhere near as pressured, because most people were either walking or they're on the back of a horse. And actually, people then didn't travel as far as we do now. So actually, there is a bit of a weird construct element around it. But that aside, it's very true that now that the evolution of cities and adapting to cars is very, very difficult. Because when we have loads of terraced houses in some of our large cities, because when they were built, people didn't have cars. So you didn't have to worry about on-street parking or anything like that. And now, going back to some of the issues raised around poverty and things, then actually these houses are now starter homes, because they're small, and it's actually people who can't afford bigger homes are having to buy them houses because there's nothing else on the market. Fundamentally, and we'll probably get into this, is one of the premises of the article is we want to reduce the amount people want to use cars. And here in the UK, we are seeing a greater drive into the reduction of the use of cars. But fundamentally, I've got no problem with that, because single-use transport, particularly if I'm driving on my own, is a waste. If I've got people in the car with me, that's a slightly different matter. But you need viable alternatives, and there need to be cost-effective alternatives. So if I wanted to go and do, say, the journey I've done today, I wouldn't be able to get it door to door where I want to be. It wouldn't be convenient. I wouldn't be able to take my luggage with me as easily, and it'd be very, very expensive to do, and not on my timetable. So yeah, there isn't a viable alternative here in the UK, really, unless you live right in the centre of big cities. So if you live in London, you've got the tube, you've got the bus network, all that sort of, that works really well. As soon as you step outside of London, you're kind of scuppered. And I guess the same must be true, if not worse, in the States, because you drive everywhere, and everything has gone suburban in that way. So I'd be interested to hear your views on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it is, from, I guess, someone in Europe who, like, Europe, UK, like, I think there's, like, this whole, there was a Reddit post the other day of, like, do you guys really drive everywhere for everything? Like, how do you get groceries if you're in the suburbs? Like, you drive. You drive 15 minutes to the local grocery store. And that's how we get around. And so, they were very not used to this in Europe, and it's
Mm.
like this whole foreign concept to them. And so that, like, this, um I think the interesting bit is that, yes, we do drive everywhere, and cities can do a lot for reducing congestion and planning transportation effectively to get people who are in the city around. But this long distance driving, this long distance commute, the long distance travel, that piece isn't solved yet, at least here in the States, right? Um, uh, there's not like a light rail that goes through the suburbs that you can just hop on. Um, it's not a thing that's solved. And so I don't know. Eh, I this article is so interesting for a lot of different reasons. And I want to kind of focus here on the thesis of the article, which is kind of sticking around. How does design in the city affect the way that we perceive things as drivers, right? So we're taking that approach with the analysis of this article, and I appreciate your analysis on the cognitive load and how that's changed over time. And I love that we can dissect these articles in that way. It really lends a lot to how we see the world. So let's dive into it. I don't know, what area do you want to kind of focus on first here, Barry?
Well, firstly, I think I wanted to dip into just the whole principle of urban design, because it might not be a term that everybody is necessarily familiar with. I'm lucky enough to have known and do know two urban designers, Claire and Matt, who taught me an awful lot when we lived in our previous city of Gloucester, around how urban design is really taking that holistic perspective of around neighborhoods, around, so not just looking at the development of a particular road, but how does that road fit into the landscape that it's in? How does it fit into what it does, etc., etc. Um, a really good example of where I got heavily involved in it is in the development of a housing estate where I lived and I was representative for, and it was really interesting seeing how they could use design to get what we wanted out of appropriate driving behaviors without having to necessarily legislate for it. So if we want, so through the housing estates, we wanted people to drive slower, but we wanted it to be their decision to drive slower, not just to be big warning signs everywhere say you must drive 10 mile an hour, 20 mile an hour, 30 mile an hour, for two reasons. One is you get better engagement that way, and secondly, if you force that behavior, then the drivers have that sense of responsibility, and they've been brought along for the ride, accepted. They've been brought along for the journey rather than just being dictated to, because people take that sort of thing better. So some of the things that they were engaging with is, rather than building straight roads, you'd build wiggly roads. So you couldn't see, you were constantly almost feeling like you were going around a corner. And when you're going around a corner, particularly when there's traffic parked, that you would automatically slow down because you were having to take a more cautious approach. But that was you having to take that decision to do that, not being told just by sign to slow down. Equally, putting there was a word that they used, and I can't. Oh, when a word just slips out your mind. But anyway,
Yeah.
they would put traffic calming obstacles there to be part of the street furniture that they would have maybe a build out into the road slightly, but with a tree in it. So it wasn't necessarily a straight up stop sign or anything like that. But it was something that looked like it was part of the road aesthetic, the street aesthetic. But you would have to slow down for it because it was in the breaking out into the road. So I really like that idea of urban design. I really like the way that it is that holistic piece and trying to work with everybody for everybody's benefit rather than just being dictatorial. And it is for me a real behavior driven activity, which I just think is really neat.
Yeah, those are some great points. I've also seen, sort of the design of, I guess even road elements. So like keeping a little barrier between the like bike lane and the car lane, and that then reduces the total amount of space that you have on the road, which means that you drive slower when those lines are closer together than if you were to drive further apart. So like on straightaways you might reduce the total width, so that way you have to drive slower, so that way you're not going to hit the other cars on the side of the road. That like those are all some great points here. I see some other points that you want to you want to address. The anti-car agenda. Do you want to talk about that?
I just feel, and there was some comments made in the article around how we want to. There seems to be a big drive at the moment to get people to stop using cars, and that's fine from a number of reasons. Largely, yes, from a climate change perspective, we need to reduce the amount of carbon we put in, and we know cars pollute. But now, as an electric car driver, then I don't pollute as much. And actually, I'm pleasantly surprised. I noticed today that in the car park that I was in, even just to change over a year, when I parked in over a year, there was maybe two other EVs in the car park, and I was in there today, and there was considerably more. You're still not up to 50% of the car park, but it was noticeable how many more there were. So it's interesting how we have quite a few politicians around at the moment who are pushing this anti-car agenda, but which, as we said before, I don't necessarily have a problem with. This article seems to have fallen into that anti-car agenda to a certain extent. There are comments made through it. Yet we're trying to drive down this idea about how do we make driving, I guess better. How do we reduce the stress on driving itself? Yet it's still talking about trying to take people out of cars and onto walking and cycling and things like that.
Yeah.
That
Well,
does. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, I mean, that opens up the conversation about like stress levels in general and sort of the ease of navigation within a city, right? Like a system that kind of helps with some of these, um, with that lessened workload can really help reduce that stress in drivers. And this can be done through things like clear signage, uh, that intuitive layout, lane markings, all that stuff that helps drivers easily understand what's going on. I mentioned that driving through an unfamiliar city is really stressful because you're not familiar with where you need to go, what the signs mean anything. LA is particularly bad. I don't know. I never drove through there. But I think there's kind of two examples here that we can maybe point to, like in New York, this grid system in Manhattan, and I think in Arizona too, they use a grid system in Phoenix, and so that navigation is easier when you understand that grid system, because then you can just go up so much and over so much, and then you're there, which can reduce that confusion. And if you miss it, then you just circle around and go one more street down, one more over, then go back. So that's one way to approach it. But then there's also, um, the sort of complicated roadways that we were talking about, the squiggly ones, that does induce more stress, but intended stress to make you slow down.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're doing that, you just need to be clear about it and make it not confusing, because that is what results in stress. Like if it's straightforward, you know that there's a turn there, you're going to slow down for the turn. But if it's like a turn then a switchback, then that's like a confusing thing to do for a driver, because then they're not sure if they're going in the right direction. Their sense of place in the world is like shifted if they're going away from the target but then kind of swerving back to it. This is like in Boston, there's a lot of older areas that tend to be associated with driver confusion and stress. I struggle to find those correct routes over there. So East Coast examples, we'll bring in some West Coast ones a little later on. Where do you want to take the conversation next, Barry?
I think if we stick with the ease of navigation for a moment, because I think there is also an evolutionary thing here as well, because you mentioned in earlier on about using old style maps. When you used to go on a journey of any distance or length, you'd get the map out first. You'd work out where it is you're going to go, almost familiarize yourself with the route, and drive it. And then if you got lost, you'd stop, you'd call somebody over, we don't do that anymore because we have cool sat nav devices on our phones. And the interesting thing with that, and I think we talked about it before here, is we now have a much more just in time approach to navigation and getting somewhere. So if you route plan on your device and it says you can be there in 50 minutes, historically you'd have turned around and said, right, that's 50 minutes, but traffic can be bad, I'll add an extra 10 to 15 minutes to my journey, and so that gives me a bit of a gap to go with. Now you plug in and it tells you 50 minutes, so if you need to be where you need to be at 2:00, you will set off at 1:10 because it's told you it's going to be 50 minutes. And you expect the navigation device to do remapping for you for congestion and stuff like that. So actually, we've taken technology and allowed it to stress us out more because we've moved our barriers, our contingency planning, and we just in time navigation. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think that opens up the conversation about congestion and sort of this fatigue that you would experience in congestion. I mentioned it at the top. Sitting in traffic. Let's just call it what it is. Sitting in traffic and sort of these, a lot of overcrowded roadways. I think one thing that, like, growing up in California, their solution is just, widen the freeway. More lanes equals less congestion, right? More bandwidth means more cars can get through without needing to stop. Not always true. When there's crashes and whatnot that slow down a lane, you still have the merging, all that stuff. But I think you look at an example like LA, where these traffic jams mean that 405, you're going 1 mile an hour, quite literally in some cases, where I think those long commutes are, and I guess the needless exhaust that is being put into the atmosphere is one of the reasons why we're so anti-car, at least in this article, and politics in general. And if they're EVs, then it's better, but electric vehicles, then it's better. But I think there's still this mental fatigue that happens when you're sitting in traffic. And I will cite like a very specific example that's more, I guess, to do with the design of the car than the environment. But if you are going through, well, two things. Let me sort my thoughts here. So first off, if you're going through an environment, you want to make it, I guess, more dull in a lot of ways, because you don't want drivers' attention to be off the road, especially if you're driving through a city center on a freeway. You don't want the attention to be on the buildings around you. You want the attention to be on the road, so that way you're not looking at all this stuff going on around you and potentially be distracted. And that's true anywhere that you're at, but especially true in cities where there's more pedestrians on the road. Not so much on freeways, but if you are driving, you want the focus to be on the road and not everything around you. So that's one. But two, the thing that's made that congestion piece, the mental fatigue, a little bit better, is the sort of onset of a lot of these automated systems on vehicles, right? So I had a rental car that had automatic cruise control, adaptive cruise control. That's been around for a while. The lane maintenance, and all you had to do was keep the hand on the steering wheel, and it mostly took care of everything for you, right? If you're sitting in traffic, you no longer have to go on and off the pedal, which was the most fatiguing part, paying attention to when things are happening. Now, instead of, okay, put foot on the pedal, go, you're paying attention to what's going around you. So I will kind of just briefly mention that automated systems are helping with that, but a good portion of the cars on the road are not automated at this point. So I think that's, something to bring up there, just with the traffic flow, peak times, all these considerations with designing for urban environments. I think we can be more thoughtful about how we make those corridors and pathways go through a city, right? That will help reduce congestion over time. And I do have a specific example to point to for this, but I'll wait on that until we've talked through a couple more points so I can kind of circle back on the points.
Yeah, I think there's nothing wrong at all. In fact, I think it's quite a good thing that if you're stuck in congestion, and if you're doing that, it's you're focused on the car in front of you. You're focused on why can't this car move? Because the car in front of it can't move. Because the car in front of it can't move. If you've got things around it that will actually make it more engaging to drive through. So if you see nice things, if you see things around you, if you've got notable things to be looking out for. I always remember as a young child, going to visit my grandparents. There was on the drive to them, which was sort of cross country, a sculpture had been built of a brick sculpture had been built of a railway train, and you always knew when you were getting close because you'd see this railway train, this brick railway train, and so you had something to look forward to as a kid. It was something, you're waiting for that landmark to come along. If you make somewhere where you are going to be stopped and in congestion, to make it a less stressful experience, because generally, so if I drive here in the UK, if I'm going to drive, say, back from Bristol, so from England to Wales, where I'm at the moment, I know that I'm going to get stuck on the piece of motorway that we call the M4. If I hit that anything like rush time, because rush hour, then I know I'm going to get stuck in it. It's just every day it just happens. So the government refused to do anything about it, so it is just going to exist. But if you made the stuff around it nicer, so as you the differences between that motorway and one of the other ones, is it's a dull, boring, monotonous motorway. Whereas if you go drive to some of the other ones, you've got amazing scenery to look at. You've got all this stuff, so you don't necessarily mind being stuck a bit because you can look at the hills and stuff like that. But it's that I always feel nicer for driving up some other motorways, because they're just nicer to look at and take in. And I think if we are cognizant of the fact that some people are going to be stuck there, then we there's nothing wrong with trying to make that aesthetic nicer for them
Well,
to look at.
sure, there is that aesthetic piece of it, but I guess there's the trade-off between safety and aesthetics, right? You don't want something to be too distracting for someone who's unfamiliar with the environment, especially in non-peak hours, right? So that's kind of what my point was, is that you don't want to make anything distracting in those non-peak hours that could potentially result in an accident and then cause congestion, right? So I guess that was
Yeah.
more my
Which
point.
No, which is a really good point, right to the point that we see the amount of road furniture with basically advertising hoardings on them,
Yeah.
which I mean they are UK, US, or I think presumably around the world. There are the amount of advertising that you get that is distracting. Um, I guess that fits as as an alternative into some of this.
Yeah, billboards is what we call them here in the States, right? And so yeah, those side of the road advertisements that you see there, those are distracting in a lot of ways. And I think, like, at least from I'm talking from a Southern California perspective right now, there are what they do on the freeways is they kind of build up walls around the sides. So that way you're more focused. I mean, you can still see buildings around them. You can
Hmm.
still see landscape and scenery. It's not like you're completely locked into a tunnel. But I think reducing the amount of like visual noise in the immediate periphery is a good thing. You still have those landmarks, you still have buildings sticking out, you still have, major streets, cross sections that you know of. But I think that whole focusing the attention on the road is the best part that you can do there. I think the same thing here, at least in Portland, is like there's a lot of there's a lot of the same tricks being used there, and there's some really pleasant scenery to look at. I actually find myself getting more distracted up here in Portland than I did in California because the scenery is, much more beautiful. And there's like a bridge that you drive through, and then you come up on this mountain, and you drive right under the mountain, and it's anyway. So, speaking about all that, like there's these safety concerns, I guess, when it comes to sort of uh, the road piece itself, right? So thinking about sort of, like I said, making it so that way you're not seeing all of the excess stuff that's kind of down below the wall, where you're going to get distracted by all that. And I guess the most important piece here, at least for me, with respect to this article, obviously we talk about from the driver's perspective, but when I think about safety, I do think about the drivers, but I also think about the pedestrians. And so putting lots of visual indicators that there's like pedestrians nearby, especially in like city city street driving, not on a highway or a freeway or anything like that. I think that's really important, especially when it comes to like lighting and crosswalks. I mean, we saw a very unfortunate example of a woman who lost her life because an autonomous system didn't see crossing the road in the middle of the night with a bike, but like it was done on a city street. And so you have there's a lot more that went on with that issue than what I'm talking about here, but just having plenty of opportunities for pedestrians to cross, that also reduces the amount of like speed that a driver can take without having to, hit an intersection. And so that's why you see slower driving in the cities. I don't know. Where do you want to go with this?
A couple of other safety measures that I think are really useful. So, in Germany, in a lot of the German cities, they do proper dividing of space between cyclists, drivers, and pedestrians. So, making sure that each has as much authority in its own space as it possibly needs to have. So, the cycling is properly controlled as well as pedestrians are. They're not just seen as an add-on to the highway, if that makes sense. And it's like curveball, but I think it's a really genius way of looking at it is musical highways. So the musical highway is one that has got the vibrations that you would have, say, when you come up to say a roundabout or an intersection or something where to alert you or encourage you to slow down. But actually, if you go across these at the right speed of the road, of the posted speed, it sings a song through the vibrations of that, and that is a great use of behavior cueing, because you want to hear the song, so you will stick at the right speed because you get that reward piece from it, and therefore you're keeping to the safe limit, but you're encouraged to do it. You're not told to do it. So I just think that they're two really neat examples of I guess proactive safety measures.
Yeah, I agree. I think where we could go now is to kind of talk through a specific example. I know I'm looking at the clock here to see like where we're at in the episode. I think so I would like to talk about the Alaska Way remodel that's happening close-ish to me up in Seattle, and this is really interesting because what I mentioned earlier is there's this kind of freeway running straight through Seattle's waterfront, or there was. They moved it underground and redesigned that entire space. So before it was elevated and kind of blocked off a lot of the buildings from being able to see, it actually separated a lot of like downtown Seattle with the waterfront. And so for pedestrians, it's a whole thing that they redid to be a little bit more easier to navigate, I guess, from that perspective. But I think there's some interesting pieces here. Is that the connections to the park spaces, the restaurants, the stores, the neighborhoods, by removing this corridor that
Mm.
was more like a wall than it was anything else, they're actually sort of connecting all these places together. And it's not like you can't drive there anymore. You still can. A lot of these measures are for the pedestrians, but I do want to also comment on what this means for the driver. So there's talking about like the aesthetic piece of this. It's a little bit more pleasant to look at because before it looked very industrial, and now there's actually like planted trees. You can actually see the waterfront. You see all the buildings. It's actually quite pleasant. I was just there, and you can see you drive slower there, and it's not like this huge congested mess that it used to be because it was a freeway before. It's just really interesting to see how that has been designed for pedestrian accessibility, but also provided a really positive experience for drivers. As they're driving through that, they're driving slowly. They can leisurely um, actually look at their environment and enjoy what's going around. And, I wasn't driving it personally. I had, a ride share, but I think if I was driving it, it would be less stressful than if I was to, be under a freeway, trying to figure out all that stuff on my own. And then just to streamline things, they did kind of go, underneath that pathway for the road for the freeway. So now it's kind of isolated, but it is a tunnel, which again focuses your attention on the road and not everything else around you. So I think there's a lot of really positive things that are going on with this specific project that touch on a lot of the things that we talked about. I will bring up Alex in chat, bringing up the redo of the Willamette Falls in downtown Oregon City, hitting these positive marks as well. So that's one of our social thoughts for the week.
That's cool.
Check it out.
I guess, as you said, we're running low on time. I think one of the other bits, I guess, as a counterfactual to a certain extent, is one thing that's been tried of his dual use spaces. So a space which a driver can drive through and a pedestrian can walk on. So pedestrian can walk on as if it was a pedestrianized area, but the driver can also drive through. And the idea is that nobody has right of way. You're on an equal footing. Therefore, the theory being that the driver has to get the eye attention of the pedestrian, so you have to make eye contact, and then be able to navigate and almost buy into a social contract that you're not going to run each other over type affair, and therefore you can navigate through this piece. Now, we tried this in Gloucester, in a particular corner in the centre of town, and what it ended up with was the idea was it was meant to be an open area, but it turned out that it caused massive amounts of congestion because no pedestrians would give way at all. But then when cars got moving, the cars wouldn't give way at all because they would be sort of basically bumper to bumper, and it would end up being like a train. So it ended up having to put in a pedestrian crossing area into there to make it work properly, because both sides just really, really annoyed each other. And the other big finding we found out of that is actually the shared spaces are a really good idea unless you're blind. And then because you can't navigate, you can't make that social contract with it's not like you can shout at the car because most people have the windows up. So I thought it was just worth highlighting that, because not all things, they're good ideas, but they don't necessarily get full use everywhere. And I guess we could do an entire another show on smart cities.
We could.
Well,
yeah. So we didn't even touch on accessibility, which you were just hinting on that. We didn't talk about Internet of Things. We didn't talk about parking. We didn't talk about all this community piece of it, economic considerations, self-worth, all this stuff. We didn't even touch on a lot of that. And I'm sorry, we have to wrap up and get to the next portion of the show. Barry, final thoughts.
Well, I kind of just wanted to, because we had another social thought from Graham Coth, and where I'd sort of put, does this have an impact? Do you see it and all that sort of stuff? And he'd come back with, yes, I think so. I mean, short, sharp, to the point. Thank you very much, Graham, for that.
Excellent social thought. All right, so we gotta move on, but thank you to everyone, especially our patrons this week, for selecting our topic, and thank you to our friends over at UX Collective for our news story this week. If you want to follow along, we do post links to all the original articles and our weekly roundups in our blog. You can also join us on our Discord for more discussion on these stories and much more. And of course, you can always vote on next week's story on our Patreon. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back to see what's going on in the Human Factors community right after this. Are you tired of boring lectures and textbooks on human factors and UX? Well, grab your headphones and get ready for a wild ride with the Human Factors Minute podcast. Each minute is like a mini crash course packed with valuable insights and information on various organizations, conferences, usability methods, theories, models, certifications, tools, and much more. We'll take you on a journey through the fascinating world of human factors, from the ancient history to the latest trends and developments. Listen in as we explore the field and discover new ways to enhance the user experience. From the Think Aloud protocol to the critical incident technique, focus groups, iterative design, we'll make sure that you're the smartest person in the room. Tune in on the 10th, the 20th, and the last day of every month for a new and interesting tidbit related to human factors. Don't miss out on the Human Factors Minute podcast, your ultimate source for all things human factors.
Human Factors Cast brings you the best in human factors news, interviews, conference coverage, and overall fun conversations into each and every episode we produce. But we can't do it without you. The Human Factors Cast network is 100% listener supported. All the funds that go into running the show come from our listeners. Our patrons are our priority, and we want to ensure we're giving back to you for supporting us. Pledges start at just $1 per month and include rewards like access to our monthly Q&As with the hosts, personalized professional reviews, and access to the full library of Human Factors Minute, a weekly podcast where the hosts break down unique, obscure, and interesting human factors topics in just 1 minute. Patreon rewards are always evolving, so stop by patreon.com/humanfactorscast to see what support level may be right for you. Thank you, and remember, it depends.
Yes, huge thank you as always to our patrons. We especially want to thank our Human Factors Cast All Access and VIP patrons, Michelle Tripp and Neil Gainey. Hey, if you want your name read on the show, become a All Access or VIP patron. And while we're on the topic of Patreon, let me just tell you what that helps us out with, because I mentioned it at the top of the show. I mentioned it. You just heard the commercial for it. But what does it actually help with? Well, we have hosting fees for a lot of different things that we do, right? So we do the podcast, we have the website. There's all this capability that we're using behind the scenes to make this possible. And so a lot of the support that you all give to us goes right back into that. And we're actually experimenting with automation, products and services that really help out with the audio, video production, and the lab. It really does generate a lot of like tools and resources for the lab. And so I don't pocket any of it. It all goes back out into costs. So I'm still in the hole. Still in the hole. How long have we been doing this? 7 years? Oh, geez. Oh. Anyway, I think that's our cue to get into the next part of the show, where we check in with the thing where I can't find the thing. There it is.
It came from.
Need better buttons.
I love the professionalism of the show. It's amazing.
Need better buttons for these things. All right, yes, let's get into It Came From. This is the part of the show where we search all over the internet to bring you topics that the community, our lovely community of folks, talking about. If you find any of these answers useful or funny, give us a like to help other people find this content. We got 3 great ones up for you tonight. We got the first one here by user Figs and Jam on the Human Factors subreddit. Advice for interviewing for Human Factors roles. They write, I'm a senior Human Factors engineer looking for new roles. I've been applying 7 months, but have had no luck. I need advice on how to improve my interviewing skills and highlight my abilities, as I feel overlooked compared to those with a master's degree. I have relevant skills in hardware, graphic design, front-end development, and UI UX. I would appreciate some mentorship and advice in this area. Barry?
So for me, I mean, I don't have a human factors degree, and look at me now. Woo! I mean, really, the value that you've got here is you've got 7. How many years experience? I thought, they've been applying for 7 months, but
4 years.
4 years experience. So you've got a whole chunk of experience there that is something that you don't get when you get your degree, because your degree, you're getting a whole bunch of knowledge thrown at you for you to assimilate and work with and work off other people's experience. But when you've done it yourself, and you're a senior human factors engineer now, you got that real life experience, and what that experience I think gives you that can't necessarily be taught is things like working under pressure, looking at team engagement, negotiation. I mean, how many times on these have we talked about how to engage with different parts of the organization? You'll more than likely engage with demanding customers and users, and in things that outside of a classroom or maybe a role play. You've actually got some users who won't give you the information, or customers that are truly demanding. And also the taking up methodologies and the things you read in the book and actually tailoring them to a real life situation. because no methodology survives first contact. You have to adapt, and that's not necessarily, that's something that as soon as you come out of university, you don't necessarily have that appreciation that you need to do. But the flip side is true. You're going to not know stuff that is taught throughout a master's degree or a graduate typical human factors degree, and I've had that myself. I've got bags of experience in some areas, and I've got very little experience in others. And we were talking about just yesterday today, talking about the sort of human factors investigations, so incident investigations and things. Now, I've got no experience in that whatsoever, but I'm quite happy to turn around and say I've got no experience in that whatsoever. But I know people who do. But also, I put a little thing in my book saying, actually, I need to learn a bit more about human factors investigation, because if more people are asking about it, it could be interesting. It is potentially harder in some safety critical areas. So here in the UK, particularly defence, nuclear in particular, I think, is possibly one of the hardest domains to get into if you don't have human factors qualifications, because it is part of the suitably qualified piece, and it's something I've done very little work in myself, but I've been in other areas. So wager on your experience. Your experience is worth so much, and you're possibly doing yourself down. Nick, that was a long way around saying that piece.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, so you started mentioning the safety critical domains, biotech, pharma. That's kind of safety critical, and because devices need to be safe and effective.
Oh, that was cheap.
It was cheap. Hey, go listen to that.
Bad.
Heidi and I put a lot of work into that. Go listen to that. So devices do have to be safe and effective to be out there on the market, and the rigor that it has to go through for those FDA approvals, at least here in the States, I think there's a lot there that you can't necessarily teach to. I think you need some good fundamentals. So this is my short-winded way of saying 4 years experience in my mind equates to about the equivalent of a degree, just in terms of raw experience. Different types of experience. With a degree, you're learning fundamentals and methodology, but the 4 years experience in the workplace gets it all those things that you were talking about, Barry, the work environment, interacting with users, the pressures that you experience, time management, the application of those methodologies, right? I just kind of to hammer this point home, think about the reasons why I would hire someone with a master's degree over the reasons that I would think about hiring someone with work experience, and then try to plug those gaps, right? So a master's degree might know more fundamentals. And so if you can patch those gaps and speak the language, that might be more. I don't know for specifically within biotech and pharma, they might have stricter requirements or vetting procedures to find folks that have gone through or that know more fundamentals, especially those who have had sort of the experience already working in that domain. That's what I'm thinking. Okay, so let's move on to this next question. This next one is by For Computer Stuff on the user experience subreddit. They write, is it a bad time to try becoming a UXer? Should I pursue a career as a UXer despite concerns about salary and competition trends? Barry, what do you think?
In fact, you call it a UXer does concern me. I don't know. I'm always mixed when we get this type of question, because particularly around UX, because I'm kind of like, well, no, but yeah, but because I've said it before, and I'll sort of say it again. I still feel UX is seen as trendy. As it's fashionable. And I still think, even though, I mean, it's been going for a bunch of years now, and there's some really amazing people in there who do stuff, but I still feel it's kind of finding its feet and growing. I think that there are people who will go and do the qualifications or do the initial engagement because they think it's going to be easy. There was a massive trend, and I don't know whether it's still there, but lots of people went to university to do psychology because they thought it was going to be easy, and it was an easy degree to do. And then you get into it and you realize, actually, no, not so much. It's actually quite, especially if you're taking it seriously, it's difficult, and quite right too, because people are difficult. But fundamentally, if it sings to you, if you feel that that's your bag, then pursue it. But I would possibly look. I would be thinking wider, which is one of the reasons I like human factors as a broader thing, is because it does give you a grounding in a wide range of stuff, but you can specialize in areas, but and play it that way would be my approach. Nick, what about you?
These two communities. So like UX is not human factors and human factors is not UX is just a bad argument. And I hate that because it is all the same thing. But I think you're right in the sense that UX feels more lucrative and easier because it doesn't have the same rigor that human factors, which is traditionally associated with like safety critical systems, has. And so they're the goals are the same between the two communities. And I know this is not the premise of the question, but make things easier for the user. So that way, in safety critical environments, no one's dying. And in software development, in UX, it's so that they're not frustrated with your product and they want to buy it or consume that thing more. So ultimately, the term UX, while it might be trendy, I think the understanding for a need to include the end user in the discussion as a stakeholder ultimately is where we're going, and I see more and more opportunities for that in the long run. I think as more and more companies begin to have that sort of UX maturity, there's going to be more companies that need that role fulfilled, and they'll need it in a way that's going to do it correctly. And I don't know if we're necessarily there, but the market's weird. We're still recovering from this 2020 realignment, but we're kind of normalizing, or we were kind of normalizing, and then the tech layoffs happened, and that didn't help. Um, I don't know. Do what your heart wants. If you like UX and your heart is in it, do it. I don't know. This seems like a question. It's like if you like doing the thing, do the thing. Like,
Yeah.
well, yes, it's going to be competitive, but it sounds like this is more. I don't know. This sounds more resource allocation driven than it does interest driven, and I think you need to look at what your interests are. That's just my 2 cents. All right, last question here by Unworklichikit. Wow, I don't know that one. UX research subreddit. They write, giving up on making people listen. This is a very long-winded post. I'm just going to edit it here. As a researcher, I am starting to question whether it's my job to convince stakeholders to engage with my research. I don't feel responsible for educating or evangelizing those who are not open to it. I'm hesitant to follow the playbook on increasing research impact. I would try harder if I truly cared about the product or the company's mission, or if I enjoyed influencing people. Yeah, if I enjoyed influencing people or being recognized as smart, but ultimately my responsibility is to do the research that benefits the company. If they choose not to engage with the insights, it's not my responsibility. I care about doing good research and sharing it with those who need it, but I'm tired of making people listen if they don't want to. Does anyone else feel this way? Barry, what are your very politely worded thoughts on this one?
Oh, we've got to be polite. Okay. Hard message. Get another job. I mean, fundamentally, what you've described is you're not enjoying what you're doing. Now, you're either not enjoying what you're doing because of the role or because of the company. But fundamentally, you don't like what you're doing, find something new. If you don't believe in who you work for, what they're delivering, find somewhere else. So if you believe in the job, but you don't believe in your employer, you don't believe in the company or what they're producing, do something else with it. If you don't believe in the actual work that you're doing, because actually what you describe, you like doing the research, but the other half of the job is to get people to engage with it. We've spoken time and time and time again about half of our job is bringing people into the fold and getting them to understand that users matter. What you've described that you enjoy is only one half of the job, I'm afraid. And it always will be, because you're always going to be part of that positive tension between software engineers wanting to do what software engineers do and us wanting to try and bring them into the thinking about what users want to do at the very, very basic level. Nick, what's your very politely worded way of suggesting a way forward for this individual?
Get that censor button ready, Barry. So I think the the thing is here that uh, it shouldn't be our job, but we are advocates of the user. And if you don't advocate for that user in trying to get your research to be accepted by these stakeholders, then what are you doing? That's exactly our job, you twat. There you go. All right. We
Yay!
did it. All right. And now we just move on to the fun part of the show with that. One more thing. Barry, what is your one more thing?
So very quick, I can't remember whether I mentioned it last week, but I'm actually moving company offices, and in theory, get the keys tomorrow. So that's exciting. And maybe next week, if I get my shizzle together and stuff, we could maybe even have a tour around the office because I'm allowed in it past 7 o'clock at night. And so that might be exciting. It might also be too late. We'll see. But the thing I wanted to really mention is something I haven't done in a while. Is when I'm doing some bits of research and stuff. Sometimes you can't get a bit of methodology that fits perfectly what you want to do, because it doesn't exist. And I was getting myself wrapped around the axle about a particular bit of work I'm doing at the moment, because there's not a lot of research out there, and there's not, which is exciting because it means you're properly breaking new ground. But also there was methodologies that I wanted to use, but I couldn't because either they weren't valid enough or whatever. But fundamentally, there wasn't a methodology that existed to do what I wanted to do. Now, I don't know why I had this mental block, because it's never normally hit me in the past where I've just turned around and said, hey, I'll carve my own path here and I'll create something new. But it hit me. I was standing in the shower, frustrated with what I was doing, and thinking about it. And I was just standing in the hot shower, and I was like, but I could create a new process here. I could create a new methodology. And by the time I got out of the shower, I had a new name for it. I had 2 versions of it, and also how it could go and be deployed in a civilian market and everything. And I'd just forgotten the fun in developing brand new methodologies with a view to then being able to go and, validate them and go and do that. So it was the best shower I've had in months. Anyway,
that's going to be a clip. That's exciting. That's awesome. I can't wait to read it. You are going to publish it, right?
I may or may not be able to, depending on how I can do. But what we are trying to do is to get it to a place where it is publishable, and I've got a twist on it, which I think will do that. And actually, it's completely inspiring as well. So
awesome. Well, my one more thing this week is I talked about it a couple weeks ago. I got the Steam Deck, and I want to do a little update. So this device is a handheld gaming console, gaming PC, and it works very well for Steam games. There's a lot of setup to do with non-Steam games, but actually the thing that I have found the most interesting is that I have got it set up to do cloud gaming on Xbox.
Okay.
And that has been phenomenal. Because the way in which this device operates, it's a handheld PC. And so like a lot of the battery power is going to processing. And when that battery power is going to just looking at a browser and accessing, a stream, it's not using all that battery power. So you can game for longer. And the latency is one thing, but like, it's not really that much of an issue. I'm on my cloud gaming high again. And just to be able to like play anything without needing to download is great. And it's, I just to follow up weeks later, it's been great to put my own things on there that are not on the Steam store. And so it's flexible in that way, but you have to modify, like, it's weird because you have to plug in a USB-C dongle so that way you can get like a keyboard and mouse to go in desktop mode and then do things behind the scenes. So it's like an actual computer, and then you're setting everything up. And then when you go into like the actual gaming mode, you can get things to work. And there's a bunch of add-ons that make it much better to use. Anyway, if anyone wants to talk about Steam Deck, let me know. Happy to do that. But that's my experience. Anyway, that's it for today, everyone. If you like this episode, enjoy some of the discussion about Barry's alarms going off, or rather, how about this? If you enjoy some of the discussion about architecture, we did an episode just recently on this called Antisocial Architecture. So go listen to that. It's episode 288. Comment wherever you're listening with what you think of the story this week. For more in-depth discussion, you can always join us on our Discord community. Visit our official website, sign up for our newsletter, stay up to date with all the latest Human Factors news. If you like what you hear, you want to support the show, you can leave us a 5-star review. Like I said, that really helps other people find the show. You can always tell your friends about us. That helps us grow. And if you have the financial means to help support us on Patreon, all that goes back into the operating costs for running the show. As always, links to all of our socials and our website are in the description of this episode. Mr. Barry Kirby, thank you for being on the show today. Where can our listeners go and find you if they want to talk about methodologies?
Well, you can still find me on X at the moment, though I must say my interest is waning on that. But then Threads isn't really taking off either, so I'm in a bit of a place. But if you
You're on
want
the
to come,
Discord.
well, you can go on the Discord. But if you want to come and chat about a big building with an X on it that gets taken off because of the weight glares at you, you can find me at Baz_K on most socials. Or if you want to come and have a chat or listen to me doing interviews with interesting people around the Human Factors community and beyond, then I'm on 1202 the Human Factors Podcast, which is 1202podcast.com.
As for me, I've been your host, Nick Roome. You can find me on our Discord and across social media at Nick_Roome. Thanks again for tuning into Human Factors Cast. Until next time, it depends. All right, stick around for the post show. We're going to do it. The music's loading.
There we go.
It's like not over until the music starts.
Did you see that the X on top of
yes,
the new
dumb.
Yeah. I mean, I was like, well, how bad can it be? You know, particularly, I don't want to be very stereotypical here, but you guys in the States do like your big flashy lights. And I was like, how bad could it be? And then you saw an actual clip of it, and I was like, wow. You know, I mean, you could be getting 747s coming to land on that thing. That was.
It does kind of look like an airstrip, doesn't it?
Yeah. But what's your whole take on where you think that X is now going to go in any other way than down?
Oh, there you said it. I don't like social media just in general is on its way down. Like I like the whole Reddit thing too. I'm frustrated about that. I'm frustrated about X. I'm frustrated about Threads. I'm frustrated about other social platforms. I'm frustrated about LinkedIn. I'm frustrated about like all social media is just a frustration for me at this point. And but specifically X or Twitter, I'm still going to call it Twitter. It's what it is just an interesting, case study in how to like completely just screw your business. Like,
well,
what are you doing?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because when you've got something, I think, like Twitter, that is, it was the OG, wasn't it? It's certainly one of the OGs. It was a proper brand leader in its time. You know, it's synonymous when you know, if you want to send a message, you don't just send a message out, you tweet about it. You know, and it's quite a well-known thing. Now, there's two sides that I've seen. You know, what the official line is that they're trying to create a new, digital high street or something where it brings everything together, or the conspiracy theory where he's just trying to ruin the brand in order to kill it because he's lost so much money through it. Which I think possibly both could be true with that. Yeah. But I don't see where X has become such a good idea, because, you know, tweeting, Twitter, or even like Facebook, it was the noun and the verb, and, you know, it was good branding, it was original, and it's, you know, in the same way as you Google for something, you know, it became synonymous, and it is thing now. But X is just clunky. You know, I've X'd, you X, we, you know, my X. Well, that's a different conversation entirely. You know, I just think he's ruined it, and I think I don't even like going into the app anymore, because it's a big X on my phone interface that just looks wrong on a number of levels. So I'm with Alex. Alex has said in the chat it needs to go in the trash, and I think that's the way it's going. I think but it will be its own trash fire, whereas Threads hasn't taken off, and I don't know what it is about it that's just because it got loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of signups in the first couple of days, but then it stalled. I think it's lost a whole bunch as well.
It's because the feeds were not personalized.
Yes, and not
customizable,
but also they weren't in time and date order.
No, that too.
So it was just random stuff thrown in there, and I was like, well, I don't know what I'm looking at. I want up to date news. But
Exactly. Yeah. So a couple things here. I'm going to talk about Reddit first, and then I'm going to give my thoughts on X. So just to address a chat here, Alex, what's wrong with Reddit? So to sum up what happened with Reddit is there's a lot of conjecture as to why this change was made. A lot of people speculate it's because CEO of Reddit wants to take it public, so they want money. So obviously profit driven, but what's happened is they've changed their rules on their APIs and access to those APIs to be more expensive. And what this means is that third-party apps like Apollo, Reddit is Fun, and there are others, those are the two most popular ones, are unable to access the service without like millions of dollars of operating costs, which in the past has been sort of free. Or very low cost, enough that they can support it. And it's like completely unreasonable for the amount of data. And they're doing this because I think of money reasons, but also the training data being used in a lot of these AI data sets now. They want to charge for that because that's actual human interaction, and that's very valuable to those AI training data sets. So there's not like, as of now, there's not like a special rate. So what's ultimately happened is these third-party apps got killed off. And that'd be fine if it wasn't for a lot of people using these third-party apps for accessibility reasons. So a lot of these third-party apps don't have the same level of bloat that the Reddit app itself has. And so they would use these for like screen reading technologies, for, you know, increasing the size and font of the actual displays. And so that's why it's important in the long term, is that the access to these apps was mainly an accessibility issue. A lot of people really like those apps. That is Reddit to them, and so they stopped using it. So that's ultimately what's happened with Reddit. My thoughts with X is this guy is just trying to burn this thing to the ground, or he's trying to make it so unrecognizable from what it once was, so that he can remake it in another vision or something. I don't know what's going on with it. I think it's terrible what they're doing to it. It's become sort of this alt-right conspiracy theory, like, awful place to be. There are still some people that I follow on there that I will go and look for news updates. There's still some funny things that pop up from time to time, but I am not on it as nearly as much as I was before. I think the point is made in chat. The issue is now that we need social media, and I do agree that can be an issue. I think there's a need for us to connect digitally.
Mm-hmm.
I completely agree with that. I think I have a lot of thoughts on this.
I think there's other platforms out there that. So I've now started to use, and I know it's the same ecosystem, but you know, I use Instagram a bit more. I use TikTok a bit more than I used to. I'm way more into YouTube and YouTube Reels and or YouTube Shorts, sorry, and things like that than I ever was. I think I still do use X for news. I mean, I haven't seen it. It might just be the feeds. I tend to use it for my news rather than my politics, if that sort of makes sense. And so I do tend to still see the up-to-date stuff or hyper-local stuff, which I'm really big into community type stuff. So I tend to do that, and I'm becoming better at not just following everybody. I don't go through and strip out people who I'm following or anything like that. But if there's people I sit there and go, actually, I don't want to listen to you anymore. I used to be a big advocate of the big tent, and particularly when I was involved in politics, I was quite keen to make sure I was listening to all sides of the argument. However, now I think that actually I want my social media space to be a nice space that I can go and dive off into. If I want to go and look at the wider thing, I will go and find them media outlets. I'll go and find them, but still from trusted sources as opposed to just random Joe blogs down the street. But I think the point that Alex is just making in the chat is we can't put the social media. It's the Pandora's box, isn't it?
We've opened it.
it's opened it. It can't go back. The idea of digital connection is there. We need it. It has to happen. We that's where we get our up-to-date stuff. On the whole, that's a good thing, because I think it's changed journalism from being. It kind of makes me laugh that the way that journalists talk about social media is rubbish because it's not feeding their narrative. And actually, I think it's made journalism more honest, because you can't just. It's always been the big journalist telling you what to think, whereas now if you use it properly, you've got the ability to find that and make your own opinion, more so than just what somebody else writes in print for you to take.
Yeah, this is where we disagree a little bit. I think it democratizes what you're calling journalism, but I think journalism as an art isn't the same as it once was. So journalism is like truly research. It is what we do, and presenting that research honestly. And what you have now, these news outlets, or it should be, at least that's my opinion on it, presenting it free of bias. And I think there are still some journalists that do that. I think there are media outlets that are more entertainment outlets now that are more focused on driving clicks for revenue. And there's not like here in the States, there's like right to free press. And so it's free, but it's also market driven. And so they need to make their money somehow. And so they cut corners in some ways. And I just don't feel like, anyway, that's a large issue. The social media issue is also different. It's like in some ways, and I know this sounds crazy, in some ways, we almost need a government level social media platform that operates in the same way as a basic necessity for citizens, like something like the USPS or the Postal Service does, right? Where it's truly operate like the whole problem with social media is the algorithms that are used for profit driven reasons, right? If we could create truly a system that is made for the people by the people, like, I know that sounds stupid, but seriously, like, if you could have a solution that manages to connect us without necessarily inciting violence or rage or clickbaity things, it could be a good thing. But what does that look like? That design challenge solution is not there yet. We don't know of one that would work successfully. There are things that we can take, but I think that motivation for profits need to be out of there for something like that to be successful.
So you could argue, so from a press perspective, a good example of that is here in the UK, we've got the BBC. And because both sides of the political spectrum say it's skewed in favor of the other one, means it's getting it about right. Because they're both having a go at it, and it is known and driven for its impartiality. And sometimes it's messed up, but on the whole, it's also got the things there to hold itself to account or be held to account when they haven't got it right, which is also good. I think in terms of a social media platform that does that, there have been a couple of recently, because isn't that what Mastodon is meant to be? Mastodon is meant to be a free to access, publicly driven, and I had a look at it, couldn't make it work. It was, I think the UI was terrible. The idea behind what it was supposed to do just didn't work. And so a lot of these people were going, "Oh, Twitter's dying! Quick, come and find me on Mastodon." And maybe it's just me, and maybe I'm just getting old, but I just couldn't get that thing to play whatsoever. But there's other platforms that I know. So I mentioned Instagram. I don't use it as much as, say, my wife does. She uses it way more than I do because the way it's done. I think there's still enough dynamic out there to get different things, but we do need that Twitter replacement, something that is, because in order to, I think this is where the interesting dynamic between Twitter and Facebook has now come about. Facebook is more for your internal, you create your groups and you engage with that. You engage with your friends and all that sort of stuff. That works well, and that's where Facebook is evolving. And the younger generations are using Snapchat on a similar principle and them sort of things. Twitter has been always based more around, yes, you can have a wider follower base, but also the sort of, that wider look at what's going on out there. You look at trending topics and things like that. We're kind of losing that capability of being outward looking without being over slaughtered by the algorithm. I guess the interesting thing I think now is TikTok, with the way that they've driven this idea around short really, really well. And their For You algorithm is phenomenal. Phenomenally scary in that it gives you it gives you exactly what you're looking for. It absolutely does drive content.
And you don't even know you're looking for it too. It's amazing.
And it's almost scarily clever. Because you're sitting there going, well, I'm enjoying this. And you, like 3 hours later, you're still scrolling on. You're like, I can't believe it's showing me content I want to see. But my For You page is way different from my kids, from Amanda, all that sort of stuff. It's very good. So I've always been amused to a certain extent. That sort of thing, people are aghast that TikTok will send you videos that you want to see. It's like, but that's really clever, and people don't really truly get just how socially clever that really, really is. Yet on Google, for example, when Google Ads sends you ads that you want to see, I remember tried to educate people that actually it was sending you stuff that you want to look at. So that piece in itself is not necessarily the bad thing. The bad thing is how we got that data in the first place. Which Google, people didn't get it, was the sneakiness of the way that they're getting their information. Whereas at least TikTok is blatantly obvious. You search for a video, you spend a lot of time looking at a certain snip of video and do it more than once or twice, shows you're interested in it, therefore it's going to show you more of that stuff. Right. It's so clever.
And then if you stop doing that, then they'll show you less of it. Yeah, it's fairly obvious what's going on.
But incredibly clever.
Yeah. It is. It really is. And I feel like this is this might just be my feed, but I feel like it's less I see promotions, but I can skip through them.
Yep.
I see, like, they're relevant promotions, so that's something. But like at the same time, I don't find a whole lot of like negativity on TikTok. There's a few like that I'm like, okay, that doesn't need to be a thing. But, like,
unless you look for it, yeah.
this, unless you look for it, right? So that's. Can I just tell a little anecdote? So my wife and I were looking for something to watch on TV the other night, and we saw on Disney Plus America's Funniest Home Videos. They just put on there, and we watched like half of an episode before we realized this was from like 2011 or something. Right. And we were like, man, all the videos are like really grainy. Like, do people just submit this through their app? Like, because they were talking about like a AFV app. I was like, why would you do that instead of just putting it on TikTok? Well, TikTok didn't exist back then.
Well, yeah.
And I'm like, and so I'm watching these videos, and our appetite for humor has changed so dramatically since then too, which you look at America's Funniest Home Videos from 2011. And it's, I hate to say this, but it's like, it's a bunch of boomer humor where you have
absolutely.
You have like animal abuse, casual child abuse, like people injuring themselves. Like it's just, and I imagine like just Facebook posts about every single video that's posted there. And I'm just like, okay, is this like true boomer humor here, or like has our society changed its appetite for humor? Because I don't find that stuff funny anymore. In fact, my wife and I were like, "Oh yeah, casual child abuse. Like there it is. Like hilarious. Like this dad almost dropped his kid, and I'm like, oh my god, this is panic inducing. Like as a parent,
when the dog jumps on the child and everyone thinks it's hilarious, or the child falls out the stroller, and you're like going, but no, that's not cool anymore, people.
But then again, here's on the flip side. I saw a TikTok video earlier today where this kid like crawls on his dad and bites his pee-pee, and he says, he bit my dick. And it's funny. Yeah. So I'm like, I don't know, like, so like it true, like I don't know the way anyway. America's Funniest Home Videos. Let's check in with the poll. Let's see how we're doing with that. It looks like Barry's favorite's winning.
Yay! Well done, people.
This is posted on LinkedIn. I probably shouldn't have said that. Whatever. It's in the post show. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Loosey goosey today.
Very much so. There's been swearing pre and post show.
Pre and post show. That's a rarity. That means Nick is in a good mood.
Fair enough. That's good.
All right. Yeah, Barry, I don't know what you've done this week, but your influence has seemed to be driving the votes towards FAA launches new committee to explore regulations on commercial human spaceflight.
See, that's because I went on to clarify and said, actually, I bet it's going to be really boring because it's talked about a new committee. See, I put in a psychological construct there where people think, now I'm not going to like that topic, therefore they're going to try and vote for it in order to make me upset about choosing the topic that I thought was going to be cool, but probably isn't. See what I did there?
Yeah. Well, you too.
It's a double bluff.
You too can vote on the news story for next week.
And you should, because it's your democratic right.
It is.
But
this is democratizing social media here. Just join our Patreon.
And and we all need to get into the habit of voting. So, because I think we're all in for. Wait, when's your presidential elections? Are those next year?
Oh, that's about a year out.
Yeah. We're going to have a general election in the next between, I would say, 3 and 12 months. So
I'm so excited. So this is a little bit of behind the scenes inside baseball for us here at the podcast. But I always text Barry when something interesting globally, politically is happening. I'm like, oh, did you see those elections? Like, what's going on? Like, did I chat you about the Spanish elections?
No, you didn't. No.
Oh.
Was that's crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
I keep up with the global politics too. It's just
yes, because we had 3 really interesting by-elections where it was so. And again, this goes back to almost the media thing that we're having, because it was so hilarious where we had the 3 different results that we had, and we kind of knew that we were going to get the results we were going to get. There was one that should have gone Labour, but there was a particular issue there. And then you cut to all the commentators interviewing senior politicians from them parties saying, shouldn't you have won that? Shouldn't you have won that election? Like, well, yes, we should have. Well, depending on who you listen to, so there's a couple of senior Labour politicians in particular, I think, who were quite good. They're quite good at calling a spade, and they were going, yeah, okay, we should have won it. We didn't. There was a particular issue, and we're going to have to review that. Oh, do you say, is that particular issue the London Mayor's fault? Well, given that the result has just come out, we've not actually spoken to the London Mayor because it was his political issue. Therefore, we don't know what the future's going to look like, because literally we've just learnt the result. So, no, funny enough, nobody's had a meeting because I've been sat here with you. And so, does that mean you are saying it's their fault? And he's like, God, this is just pure art journalism. Nobody knows whose fault it is because nobody's done any sort of sit down and said whose fault is it yet. But yeah,
it's hilarious.
It's interesting seeing, commentators commentating and then interviewers trying to get what they think is that killer political question. And he's like, oh, come on, just they're not going to answer the question the way that you want it, and there isn't an answer yet. So just ask something else. But still, It's a whole 24-hour news thing, isn't it?
It is. It really is.
So,
all right. Let's check in on the results. We're looking at. Someone switched their vote, Barry. It looks like FAA is no longer number one. We have.
well, that's not just switching your vote. That's ripping your vote away and slapping me around the face with it. Thanks, guys.
I don't know what to tell you. There's somebody who's always like, again, like, here's the thing though, Barry. What you usually say on stream, it's like they mess with us while you're on stream, and then as soon as you go to bed, they change their vote.
True. But
So,
saying
like,
that, so they've gone to just staying informed, help us cooperate. That was one I'd be quite happy to talk about because that's where we talked about it being good for climate economics and stuff. 3D display could soon bring touch to the digital world. I really don't want to talk about that.
Yeah.
No,
I mean,
what would be interesting, actually, is if we float that in the social feeds, and I get Professor Bob Stone onto that because he'll have an opinion.
yeah, I'm sure he
He
will.
always does that sort of stuff. If you don't want to talk about space flight, then actually get down to the self-driving cars to tell us about AI risk, because I think we could have a bit of humor around that, or some sort of amusing bit. Why people? Because there was an article the other day about somebody reading having an accident whilst reading an adult magazine and doing adult magazine related things, and disengaging their auto drive by accident and crashing into a wall.
Yeah, go listen to our episode on distracted driving for more on that. Actually, hilariously enough, we do have a full episode on what happens when you are engaging in. Was the whole episode on that?
No,
I don't think it was. It was an article about what happens when you're distracted. There was an analysis of videos of adults engaging in consensual.
Well, yeah. Was I around for that one, or did I listen to you guys do it? I can't remember.
I'm pretty sure you were there. Hang on, I'm gonna get some answers for us really quick, okay? Distracted driving was episode. What episode was that? Yeah. Can we define sex as risky driving behavior? Episode 239. Go listen to that one if you're in for. So, the main article was understanding sexual activity while driving as a form of distracted driving.
Yes.
And they went and analyzed a bunch of adult videos. So your anecdote there ties in nicely.
Oh.
And on that note,
yes, we should probably go to bed now.
we'll get out of here, but we'll be back presumably same time next week. Looks like whoever was on our poll has come to their senses. It looks like the votes are now 3 for the FAA story, 2 for everything else.
They were just trying to mess with us, weren't they?
I think they are. I think there's usually
just fair. Gives us a bit more to talk about.
All right.
Fantastic.
Well, yes, we will presumably be back next week to talk about some fun things. And in the meantime, you can find our whole library of Human Factors stuff on our website, humanfactorscast.media. And of course, we'll be continuing to post in case you missed it, on Monday at noon. So you can rewatch the stream here if you have any additional thoughts you want to share with us, or if you're just tuning in for the last part of it. I'll be around in chat. So if you want to say something while it's happening, I'll be there. Until then, Barry, I will see you soon next week.
See you later.
Bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Are you tired of boring lectures and textbooks on human factors and UX? Well, grab your headphones and get ready for a wild ride with the Human Factors Minute podcast. Each minute is like a mini crash course packed with valuable insights and information on various organizations, conferences, usability methods, theories, models, certifications, tools, and much more. We'll take you on a journey through the fascinating world of human factors, from the ancient history to the latest trends and developments. Listen in as we explore the field and discover new ways to enhance the user experience. From the Think Aloud protocol to the critical incident technique, focus groups, iterative design, we'll make sure that you're the smartest person in the room. Tune in on the 10th, the 20th, and the last day of every month for a new and interesting tidbit related to human factors. Don't miss out on the Human Factors Minute podcast, your ultimate source for all things human factors.
Human Factors Cast brings you the best in human factors news, interviews, conference coverage, and overall fun conversations into each and every episode we produce. But we can't do it without you. The Human Factors Cast network is 100% listener supported. All the funds that go into running the show come from our listeners. Our patrons are our priority, and we want to ensure we're giving back to you for supporting us. Pledges start at just $1 per month and include rewards like access to our monthly Q&As with the hosts, personalized professional reviews, and access to the full library of Human Factors Minute, a weekly podcast where the hosts break down unique, obscure, and interesting human factors topics in just 1 minute. Patreon rewards are always evolving, so stop by patreon.com/humanfactorscast to see what support level may be right for you. Thank you, and remember,